Welcome to Haunted Lineage, the crossroads where the paranormal and history meet. I'm your guide, Christopher Overly McDowell. Stay close as we explore chilling encounters, share spine-tingling experiences, haunted legends, eerie submissions from listeners like you, and dive into famous places where spirits may still linger. Here, every ghost has a story, and every story has roots in history. Prepare to be frightened, fascinated, and forever changed, because it's time to turn off the lights, settle in, and explore the shadows of our haunted past. This is the first Haunted Lineage podcast episode. So first I'll dive into a bit of what got me started on this adventure to begin with. Later, I'll discuss my first paranormal encounter and then examine a user-submitted story. I have always had trouble finding things that caught my attention for longer than a few days, but over the years there have been a few that stuck with me. The paranormal is one of those. I happened to stumble across a website while in high school and then started reading every book I could on the subject of the paranormal. One book in particular I recall was checked out of my high school library with the title The Ghost Hunter's Guide and discussed the Ghost Club, the world's oldest paranormal investigation group. This led to more and more research and a realization of all the phenomena I had been witness to in my life up to that point. Now for a little about me and my first paranormal experience. There was nothing remarkable about my upbringing in particular, as I grew up in a typically religious small family in rural Missouri during the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. My mother was either stay-at-home or a part-time worker during this time, while my father held a full-time position as a police officer in the small town we called home. It was a position he held for most of my childhood. While my mother never reported anything more than the occasional feeling of déjà vu, my father had more extensive experiences in his life that I would classify as paranormal. My half-sister from my father's first marriage had a similar experience to one of my father's, but we'll save that for another day. This brings me to myself and then my younger sister, who from birth suffered from severe bouts of asthma so bad that she was hospitalized for almost the entire first 2 years of her existence on this planet. She continued to suffer severe asthma attacks until around the age of 8, according to my recollection. My younger sister has had many times that the paranormal has touched her life as well, but we'll save those experiences to reference at a later time. She was born 2 years after me, so there were times when it was easier for my parents to have a family member watch me while they stayed at the hospital during one of these emergencies. It was during one of these times that I stayed at my paternal grandparents' house for a night or two and had my first paranormal experience that I can remember. I can recall that I must have been put down to sleep, as I remember lying on my side on my grandparents' bed, which was just off of the living room. It was dark outside and I was facing the north wall, which had a window in it, and I had my back to the living room. The light from the lamps and television in the living room shone through the doorway and lightly illuminated the wall as I drifted off to sleep. Sometime later, I awoke to the figure of a slim, older gentleman standing over me. Although I did not recognize him, I did not find that I was afraid, as he seemed to merely be interested in me and not there out of malice. Since I did not feel that he meant me any harm, I looked into the living room and could tell that my grandparents were still in there sitting, as their nightly routine always dictated. My grandfather reading or watching television, and my grandmother doing the same unless she was crocheting. I remember dozing back off into my slumber and do not recall any further sleep interruptions that night. It wasn't until I was in my 20s, as I was looking through some old family photos, when I ran across a photo that brought the memory rushing back. The dark figure of the man with dark features, like a black and white photo in the dark, with the ambient lighting from the room passing around his outer edges. I hadn't thought about the incident in many years, not until that moment. Not only did this revive the memory, but I connected it so instantly with the man I saw in the photo. I asked my father who the man was, and he told me that it was my great-grandfather. I told him the story, and he didn't seem the least bit surprised. After around a 15-minute discussion, I believe I was able to come up with the reason for my great-grandfather's visit. He wanted to check in on the firstborn son of the family due to the traditional value placed on male inheritance and family name continuance. Having seen that I was in good health, he never appeared to me again. Even though that was my first brush with the paranormal, it was far from my last. It's part of what keeps me interested in the paranormal. The other is that there is no end to what you can research, learn, and yet there is always still more to be found and to understand. Every case dealing with the paranormal has a different bit of nuance to it that makes it different from the one before it. Examples include how hauntings can be intelligent or simply be the equivalent of a memory, played back over and over, which has generally been accepted to be an impression of the energy of an emotional event on its surroundings. These so-called residual hauntings are doomed to repeat over and over, sometimes only triggered by certain circumstances such as a rainy night or during a full moon. Another example of how hauntings can vary greatly is how an intelligent spirit may make noises to get attention, which can make it appear to be a poltergeist. While the first spirit may be wanting to communicate in the only way it has available to it, the second may be attributed to a person with a high amount of stress somehow subconsciously manifesting these happenings as a way of relieving that pent-up stress. Craving more haunted lore and restless echoes from the past? Unlock a deeper layer of Haunted Lineage with echoes and exclusives. Subscribe on Patreon and become a curator, our inner circle of supporters. You'll get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and insider content you won't find anywhere else. Dive deeper, stay longer, keep the legends alive. To round out this first episode, we will explore a user-submitted entry from the Haunted Lineage website, where we have an ever-growing, searchable, and mapped-out database of haunted places. Many of these locations use incorrect city names or vague location information when submitted, so we do our best to verify that there is actually a location they can be tied to. We then edit them lightly for clarity, and make our notes to help readers and paranormal enthusiasts access more reliable information about these locations. The user-submitted location we'll examine is an excellent example of this. Let's first explore the basic information as submitted, and then what I've found when researching the location. While not exhaustive, this does help make the submitted information more accurate. This listing came to us simply as Blockbuster, and was said to have been located in Anniston, Alabama. Upon starting my search, I did not easily locate an address without some extensive digging, but I did find a number of news articles that mentioned many of the claims. I did manage to find the exact location, and from there, the fascinating story came to life. The story claims that there was a Blockbuster store that was robbed, and during this, 2 customers who happened to be brothers and 2 employees were murdered. Luckily, the assailant was apprehended and eventually linked to multiple other murders in the surrounding area as well as in Georgia. Now, like the fate of all Blockbusters, with the exception of one lone store in Oregon, the location eventually closed down. Sometime after this, the location was completely remodeled, including a partial rebuild, and became a medical facility. The submitter also included information about an alleged prior incident on the same piece of land back in the 1960s when there was a gas station there. The stated issue that time was that a woman was badly beaten, raped, and eventually murdered and left for anyone to find. Find her they did, at the far right side of the building, which is allegedly where the murderer left the grisly scene. perpetrator, however, was said to unfortunately never have been caught in this instance. This is where the paranormal comes into play, as it is asserted that if you visit the area where the woman met her grisly demise, you can feel a chilling wind no matter the weather condition. This is in spite of the fact that the building was replaced at some point by the Blockbuster, then partially demolished and subsequently remodeled into a medical facility. Not only is the site very different from when these events are said to have happened, but there was also a memorial of crosses put in the front of the building. The research added a few interesting, yet important facts about this story, which allowed it to be rooted in fact and bring it to life. I was unable to find a female raped and murdered at a gas station in the late 1960s in Anniston, but I was able to find a slightly different turn of events that involved a male on the night of July 12, 1967. Orville Alton Ivy, a 55-year-old service station attendant, was working at a Gulf oil gas station in Anniston. During this shift, he was attacked, robbed, sexually assaulted, and finally, murdered. The police managed to identify and arrest Billy Sunday Birth for the crime. He was 29 years old and after a trial was convicted with the sentence given being the death penalty. The only thing I was unable to verify to link this to the site was an address, as I did not find any record that had the address of where Ivy was murdered. As is the case with many word-of-mouth legends that get passed from person to person, some details seemed to match almost perfectly, while others likely changed during the course of this game of telephone. For the murders that happened while the mentioned site was a Blockbuster, I was able to locate an address, date, and extensive news coverage of the murder of the 4 people due to how recent it was. The fateful date for 2 Blockbuster employees, Douglas Edward Neal and Austin Carl Joplin, as well as 2 customers, Joseph Michael Birch and Andrew Robert Birch, brothers, who just happened to choose the wrong time to pick out a movie to watch, was May 15, 2002, with the moment of fate occurring at around 6:30 p.m. that evening. The suspect, Donald Ray Wheat, was apprehended, and during trial, he tried to pin the murders on the girlfriend he had at the time. He claimed that it was all her idea and that he had just gone along with the multi-state crime spree on a dare. Wheat only confessed to murdering his youngest victim, while claiming that the girlfriend was just as guilty as he was. He was convicted of the murders of all 4 victims and sentenced to life without parole, even with his testimony against his girlfriend, and died in prison. News articles mention that at least 1 other man was murdered by Wheat or the duo in Georgia, and that at least 2 women were injured in Alabama prior to the Blockbuster murders. The only common links I was able to find between the different murder cases at the location is that all victims were male, and all convicted for the crimes were also male. Was the land tainted by the first murder? Did the negative energy eventually draw the second murderer there somehow? We will likely never know. Yet, today, over half a century after the initial murder took place on this plot of ground, and almost a quarter century after the murders at the Blockbuster, people are still reporting occurrences. Not only are cold gusts of wind reported no matter the weather conditions, but people also report being able to feel the energy of the spirits of the deceased on the right side of the building. While the stories may not have matched up exactly with the facts found, it's certainly easy to see how they lent themselves to enabling the human mind to take some liberties to craft otherwise plausible scenarios. So here, the lesson we learn is not to discount local lore entirely, no matter how unusual it may sound, as the basis for the story often lies in true events. And that concludes this episode of Haunted Lineage. The support of our curators on Patreon makes this all possible. Join today and get exclusive access to episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and more. Had a paranormal encounter? Share it with us at hauntedlineage.com. You can find us on Facebook, Mastodon, and Blue Sky. Just search Haunted Lineage. Together, we'll continue to examine where the crossroads of the paranormal and history meet. We never know what the echoes of the past will have in store for us next. Until next time, stay curious and keep the lights on.